Hi guys, welcome back to yet another review, and this time around it's going to be a planar battle. I'm bringing you, well, a touch-up on the final version of the ET142, as the first time I actually did a review on the ET142, it was still not with its final nozzles. This Simgot ET142 has got now the final nozzles. Next to it, I've got the latest from Kiwiears and their first planar, the Aether. And next to that, I've got here the Tangzu, the Zetian, the Legend. Their, let's say, upgraded Zetian planar IEM. This is their third IEM that they have. The first one was the original Zetian, then they had the Heyday, which was a collaboration with HIFIGO, and now this is their third version of the Zetian, and this time around they've opted for something a little bit different. They've gone for a dual planar driver setup. So it's got a 14mm and then a 6mm planar driver. Anyway, besides these three, I've got here a few others which I thought made sense to have in this comparison. I've got the MP145. I've got next to that the Shows EP20. On this end here, I've got the RTT 10 Pro. Next to that, I've got the Timeless 2. Next to that, I've got the Lecture S15. And in the middle is something which is no longer available, but it's here for a reason, which is the Rapco Hook X. I'm going to try and do something different to what I've done up to now, in the sense that I've had a lot of people complaining that my reviews are too long and this and that. Well, to all of you that say those complaints, I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the suggestions, although some of them are not exactly being done in the most educated, or well, not polite, rather the best word is polite manner. But anyway, that it is what it is. So I'm going to try and make this a more concise review. I'm not in any way trying to disrespect those of you that do appreciate my format and that do like the hard work that I put into this. I'm just trying to see if I can really maybe improve things a little bit and well, make my channel a little bit better known. Oops, let me just put the music here, lower this. This is getting too much. All right. Let's get into this. I'm going to talk about the ET142 first, because this is going to be the easiest. Why is the Hook X there? The Hook X there is here because it was the first IEM of the planars to have used a dual driver setup. It had a planar and it had a PZT driver. So what Simgot has done here with the ET142 isn't anything exactly new. Rapco had done that with already the Hook X. It was also kind of a semi-open back setup, so they kind of were precursors to, let's say, this whole new wave of planar executions that we see now, which are all using some sort of dual driver. We also had the Duno, or we also had Duno doing a hybrid setup of planars which used BAs, and that wasn't exactly a very successful, let's say, attempt. I mean, I just don't understand why you would do that. But anyway, it's it's a little bit the same thing as I don't understand why as well sometimes you see BAs being used with microplanars, but BAs being used in the treble and then microplanar also in the treble. I mean, I don't know if it's more of a marketing thing or if it's actually something that makes truly sense to do. But anyway, that's just me ranting now. The Rapco, like I said, used that dual driver setup. It had a fantastic sound. It was really a nice sounding IM, and planars usually, and let's get this out of the way and perfectly clear here. Planars, all of them, it doesn't matter which planar it is. All planars don't deviate much from each other. They don't. What will make them deviate from each other will be the shell that they use and how that shell then resonates and interacts with the driver. That's number one. Number two, whether or not they have the pin gain peaking at around 2K, and how big that peak is compared to then the remainder of the mids, upper mids and treble. And then to a certain extent, yes, how the bass has been done, if it's too lean or too emphasized. In the sense of being too emphasized, planar drivers have something which is interesting, which is you can't really overemphasize them. It's just the way it is, okay? With regards here to Simgot with the ET142, when I did the review, if you guys remember, I was using these nozzles, which were slightly longer nozzles, which are basically the same size as the Simgot nozzle kit that they have. And now they've come out then with these nozzles, which are significantly short, as you can see. I mean, I don't even have to get the other ones out. You can straight away see they're shorter. They have these ones which have the red O-ring, as you can notice there. Let me see if I can focus this a little bit. Focus. No, it doesn't want to focus. There we go. You see, we have these ones which have the red O-ring, and then we have the ones which are on the actual IEM itself, which have a black O-ring. Basically, what happens with the ET142 is that you have that peak of the pin gain peaking at around 2K, and then you have a dip that happens after that. If you're using the black O-ring nozzle, which is this one, that dip is less pronounced, and so you have a more plateaued response between 2 and let's say 8K, for the sake of being easier to understand. If you're using the other O-ringed nozzle, the red O-ringed nozzle, what happens is that peak is more pronounced, so it kind of sucks out a little bit the mids. It can in the process maybe do away with some of that planar timbre or tonality that you either like or you don't like. But the reality is this: if you're getting a planar, it's because you appreciate what a planar can offer. So if you're gonna get a planar and then you're gonna be complaining about its timbre and tonality, then don't get a planar. Okay, it goes with the territory. A planar, for you to get what it has on what it offers, okay, which is resolution, which is detail, it has to have associated that timbre, that tonality. Okay, now granted, having said that, there are good executions of that, and then there are those executions which are bad and which make it shouty, very much the same as what happens with the BA. You have BAs which are properly implemented, properly designed, and when the crossover is attached to them and they are tuned, they sound good. You get what a BA is capable of doing, which is increased resolution, increased detail retrieval to a certain extent, but you don't have that metallic harshness sound that can just be sibilant and annoying and so on. And that's exactly the same thing which happens with planars. Planars, you have to have that planar goodness, but without that metallicness, which then can color the sound in a bad way and just make it a not such appealing listen. Okay, with these shorter nozzles like Simgot has done, to be honest, I didn't really see a monumental, or didn't really hear a monumental difference to the previous nozzles, which was slightly longer. Nevertheless, and because you of course have that ability to change the nozzle, what I think is the ET142's biggest strength is that you can make your own tuning. And I have got a nozzle of mine that I've tuned, which is a slightly longer one, which has got my own little basic tuning to it. And that nozzle, what it does in terms of the sound is it gives me the pin gain that we get with the black O-ring nozzle that's here in the ET42, this final version. And then that suck out, that dip is less pronounced. It's a little bit more plateaued, and overall it just makes it sound, for me, for my ears, more balanced, more pleasing. With the black O-ring nozzle, which is what is over here, the sound is pleasant, it's nice, it doesn't have any harshness or any aggressiveness. I noticed that the integration of the actual planar driver with the PZT, with the piezo, seems to be done, or seems to come across in a manner which is more coherent with this shorter nozzle than was the case with the longer nozzles. With the longer nozzles, you had a tendency of, because of that suck out that also happened with them, of being able to kind of distinguish, okay, this is planar and this is now the PZT working. You had that kind of, you picked up on that vibe occasion. So, ET142, the final version with the short nozzles, is in my opinion, a solid IM. It's well tuned. It's probably will be more appealing than the previous version, which was still having those longer nozzles. Nevertheless, what I will say is this: since you do have the ability to change the nozzles and make your own nozzle, yes, I would suggest you get your own nozzle, make your own tuning, and that's the beauty of the ET142 or any other IEM that does enable you to exchange the nozzles and play around with the tuning, is you can adjust it perfectly to your to your taste. As for the PZT, much like I already said in the original review of the ET142, it doesn't bother me. It's a very well done execution of the PZT, better than in the IVipQ Hook X. I mean, it's not that it's a dramatic difference between one and the other, but it's a better execution than in the IVipQ, and thankfully so. I mean, there has been evolution over the 3 years basically separate these two IEMs, so it's good to see that there has been some improvement. As for the rest, in terms of the fit, phenomenal. The build quality of the Simgot is phenomenal. Bass is perfect. I mean, it's the ET142 is perhaps one of those planars which the tuning that it has is a tuning which gives it a more kind of DD-like presentation while still maintaining that planar gene present. Okay, so that's the ET142. I've mentioned the Hook X. That's out of the way. Now let's talk about here the Zetian, the Legend. The Zetian, the Legend. I mean, in terms of the accessories, beautiful case, loads of tips, the Senkai tips, fantastic cable. I am not using the Senkai tips because I just don't like the way that the Senkai tips interact or fit in my ears. Not with every IEM, mind you, but with the Legend, I found that the using the 07s. Oh my God, there we go. Using the 07s with the Legend, it just made for a better fit. The outside of the tip doesn't collapse as easily. That's it. So accessories wise, Tangzu has ticked all the right boxes. Great cable, great tips. I'm sure that just because I don't like them, I'm sure many of you will like the Senkais, and like I said as well, I do like the Senkais in certain IEMs that I do have. Perfect in terms of its carrying case, although it's not pocketable. I mean, but you can definitely put your DAP inside there, your dongle. You can put everything inside there. It does bring like a little support internally to kind of fit everything more neatly. I just took it out. I just prefer it without that support. I just think it's better with this without it, and it allows for a better fit. As for the IEM itself, as I said, it's a hybrid setup in the sense that it uses two drivers, the 14mm and the 6mm. They are kind of stacked on top of each other, roughly. And yes, it is very apparent from the first listen that there's loads of extension, loads of detail. So there's no mistaking the Legend for being a planar IEM. You just can't mistake it. While with some IEMs like the Heidis, the MP145, the Shows EP20, you might momentarily here and there think of it as, is it really a planar? Isn't it? With the Legend, it's unmistakable. You know straight away that you are with a planar. It's got all of the planar goodness, and I can understand why certain people were a little bit concerned or found it to be overly intense in the upper frequencies, because the reality is, yes, if you do have a 6mm that's helping out in the upper mids and treble, you will have a lot of energy up top, and it does have a lot of energy up top. Because I'm going deaf, I don't notice that so much. It's not as it doesn't affect me as much, but having said that, I never found the Legend to be fatiguing in any manner. The only thing that I did find the Legend to be was colored, and although well done, and not as realistic sounding as some of the other planars that are here in some occasions. That's the only nitpick that I have. It's in terms of resolution and detailed retrieval, phenomenal. I would probably say it's the best out of this whole bunch here, without a doubt. So if you are a freak for details, if you like, to listen and to get and to pick up on every last twinkle, and definitely, I would definitely say as well is be careful with which source you are using, and you are pairing this with. I used the Yuki and the Cayenne, the RU7 as my two main ones, and I also use the Fire, the Q15. I prefer the warmer sounding sources. I did find that when I hooked it up momentarily to my M15, my Q style, it just made it. There, I would dare say I was finding it a little bit fatiguing for longer listening sessions. So I would say yes, be attentive to which source you are picking to connect up to the legend, the Zetian. But other than that, I mean, honestly, there's very little that I can complain about. The bass is a bass which is very similar to many of the other IMs that is here in terms of quantity and quality. However, because of that extra energy that you have up top, it doesn't come across that in that manner sometimes. Sometimes it seems like it's a leaner sounding bass. But it's a very versatile sounding IM. You know, it's an IM that you will probably listen to it at lower volumes, and by listening to it at lower volumes, then that balance of the sound is more apparent. Although yes, there's always an emphasis for mids and highs. There's always an emphasis on the legend of being more proficient when it comes to details, to vocals. That's where it shines. Having said that, I mean, if I did put a song which was, or let's say an R&B song, or if I used one of my EDM songs, it was still very much capable of giving an engaging presentation. It's just that I felt that this is an IM that will perform better or shine better with the genres which are more intricate, more. My apologies, I used the wrong word. More detailed, more that have a lot of instrument. You know, all the cymbals and in the legend, all that kind of stuff comes across. You know, the guitar plucks, they come across squeaky clean. Now, whether that is corresponding to the reality and or corresponding to your reality of what is a good sound or not, that's a different story. And personally, like I said, I found it to be sometimes, if this is a bad thing, overly detailed, okay, overly emphasizing that characteristic that it has. But it wasn't anything that offended me in any manner. I mean, there's plenty of IMs which are colored, and as long as it's done properly, I've got nothing against it. Anyway, like I was saying, the bass is fine, the mids is phenomenal, nothing to be said there. Extension up top, load, so detail in terms of detail retrieval, micro and macro resolution, perfect soundstage, huge detail retrieval, huge soundstage imaging, perfect. I mean, I would probably dare say that this, if you're a gaming fan, this would be an IM that would do probably very well in terms of gaming. It's very precise in that aspect. And that's it. That basically covers it. I mean, there's really not much here that I can say in terms of negative aspects, as I've mentioned before, and in terms of positive aspects, I mean, I've also mentioned them all. So there's not much more I can add. And then finally here, then the Kiwiears, the Aether, which is their first planar. In terms of the accessories, it's decent enough tips, although I didn't use it, the Kiwiears tips. I ended up using the 07s again. The case is a little bit okay, it's pocketable, but it's a little bit on the small side. So if you're using the stock cable, fine. But again, the stock cable is not exactly the one that I would consider a good cable. So I opted for this other cable here. There we go, which is from Luna Shops. It measures phenomenally well. I mean, really low resistance. Whether or not it's actually affecting the sound in a positive manner or not, I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole, because it's always a subject which raises a lot of controversy. So cable is perfect. It matches the Aether perfectly. It uses a new 15.3mm driver. The shell, although big, it fits really nice, really nice. There's nothing to be said in terms of the fitment of the shell. I mean, I'm a little bit undecided about this ring here on the shell, on the faceplate. I would have maybe preferred, I don't know, maybe something else a little bit more classy. This silver that they chose here for this border here of the faceplate isn't exactly, But anyway, in terms of fit, really nice, considering it's a bigger shell. Really nice, nothing to be said there. And price wise, it's around $180. Actually, just going back here on the price, the ET142 is costing around the $240. The timeless, the Tangzu, the Zetian, the Legend, around the $200. I've seen it a little bit cheaper. I've seen it a little bit more depending on the vendor, and the Ether, it's around 180 something dollar price point. This particular unit, I got it from LINSOUL. Sound wise, that's what we want to know. This follows a sound profile which is more of a not so pronounced pinna gain, that 2K area, so it's less pronounced, and then plateauing it across the majority of the most of the mids, the upper mids and treble. So it conveys then a warmer sounding. It's just more. How can I say? It's got more that, I wouldn't say old school, but let's go for that for the sake of understanding better. So it's got that more old school type of presentation, organic presentation, more realistic, and as I was just mentioning before with regards to the Zetian, the Legend, this ultimately, it might not have the same sort of extension up top as obviously the Legend has, and the same sort of detailed retrieval, but what it does have to compensate for that, at least to my ears, is a more realistic presentation. So the plucks, for example, on the guitar are still realistic and they sound more natural, while over there in the Zetian they sound overemphasized. The cymbals on the Zetian, they come across phenomenal. I mean, you know, no complaints, but on the Ether they just sound again more natural to my ears, or to my personal preference. And again, you know, this is very relative. You might think that you listen to it and it's dark or something of the sort, and that the timeless the Legend, the Zetian is the perfect execution. So this is always a very subjective issue when we're talking about you know, certain aspects of sound. Bass, really nice full bass. It's the same sort of bass as we see in many of these other IEMs here, same sort of bass presentation as we have in the Simgot, as we have in the Timeless 2, as we have in the RT, as we have in the RT T10 Pro, the Timeless 2, the same sort of bass presentation that we have as well in the Shows EP20, in the HIFIGO, the MP 145. I would actually say that the bass here on the Kiwiears is a bass that, because of the manner in which then the upper mids is done, it's a bass which comes across you know, in terms of its tonality and timbre, as the bass of the high Ds, as the bass of the P20. It's got that warmer overall tonality to it. Vocals, really nicely done, as I said, because of that more plateaued presentation of the upper mids and the treble, and also the mids to upper mids, the upper mids and then the treble. Because of that more plateaued presentation, the vocals come across really nice. I mean, there's no sense of maybe being sucked out sometimes, as occasionally happened here with the Simgot, and also depending on which of the nozzles you were using. Extension up top, treble, perfect, you know, clean, detailed, no sibilance, no nothing. So overall, what I can say about the Ether is that it's a very nice sounding planar, coupled with a price which is, I think, balanced out. I think I would have liked to have seen at least a better cable. I'm not even going to talk about the tips now anymore, but at least a nicer cable I would have liked to have seen it. And why? Because it is the first planar. It is something which by virtue of it being the first product, it deserves to have maybe a few extra little bits here and there to just make it, you know, a little bit more appealing. So a nicer cable. I mean, the LC7, this is the stock cable of the Simgot. This is a really nice cable. And that's the reason why as well it costs what it costs, because if we were to put the ET142 with a simpler cable, we could get the ET142 down to maybe $170, $180, which is the price of the Ether. So, you know, the same situation happens here with the Tangzu, with the Legend. You're paying for the fact that you're getting a nice cable. Whether or not that cable now does interact with the IEM and improve the sound, let's leave that aside. But, you know, you have to, I've said this countless times, it's not only about the sound, it's about the accessories. That's what ultimately will make a person choose your product or not. Because the reality is, they all sound pretty decent. They all sound pretty good, you know. And there isn't monumental differences between IEMs nowadays. There isn't. They will the level of uniformity in terms of performance between most IEMs has become, you know, really high. So brands have to rely on what they offer you in terms of accessories and how, you know, how good is the build quality to then justify the value that they ask. I mean, you look at the Simgot. You pick it up and you're holding it in your hand and you can feel straight away this is a solid product. This is something that you probably could run your Hummer over it and it wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't even say anything. And that's what you want. You want a solid feel, a solid build. You want to have a justification for the amount of money that you're paying. The same thing here goes for the Tangzu, and to a certain extent as well, the same thing goes here for the Aether, although they're using a resin shell. And then again, going back to what I was saying earlier, if you guys recall, you know, the differences here that many times occur in terms of the sound is not only due to how the tuning has been done, yes, but it's done or happens as well because of the shell that is being used. And I think the other reason why I got this nicer, warmer tonality out of the Kiwiears is because they're using a resin shell, which ultimately will resonate in a different manner than a metal shell. You know, it's these small micro details that differentiate stuff. That's the truth, guys. I mean, let's not. It's the same thing that happens with the T10 and with the T10 Pro. The T10 used a resin shell. The T10 Pro used the metal shell, and they both sound really good. But you notice there's a difference in the tonality between the, you know, the T10 and the T10 Pro. Ultimately, yes, the T10 Pro does edge out slightly the T10 because, and only because, the upper mids and treble are more well executed. Because if I was to look at the bass and mids, I would probably say that the T10 is the one that I think has got more my attention. Okay, so there you have it, guys. Kiwiears Aether, I think a job well done for their first attempt. As I said, in terms of the bass, the mids, really good. Extension up top, phenomenal as well. Detail, retrieval, timbre and tonality, definitely its strong point. The timbre and tonality is, you can feel, you can sense that it's a planar driver, but it's got a nice timbre and nice tonality, which doesn't make it fatiguing, doesn't bring out, let's say, the negative aspect of what a planar driver can sometimes have if not properly done. And that's it. Comparing it now briefly here with what I have. Look, guys, I'll get into more detail if you tell me exactly what you want me to compare. But I'll be very frank. Much like I said that the MP145 and the Shure EP20 were very similar because they're using the same driver. You know, that's exactly what happens here. We don't have monumental differences in terms of sound. We don't. We either have IEMs on the top there, which is the case of the MP145, the P20, and the S15, which have a more organic kind of sound. Okay, and that, you know, with the P20 and the S15, you're stuck with what it is, and with the MP145, you can still play around with the nozzles and maybe get a little bit more of that planar resolution if you want. Or then you have something like the Timeless 2, which has got a little bit more detail. You feel more that planar, genetics behind it, but it's still very well done, and it's definitely the best Timeless out of all of the Timelesses. That wasn't really good English. And the T10 Pro, you know, it's here because it's definitely an underdog. I mean, it's probably the cheapest out of all of these IEMs, that one and the P20, and it's just got this phenomenal sound. It just sounds fantastic. Bass, mids, treble, everything very well executed. And when you come to these, yeah, again, you know, it's not that the ET is better than the Aether or the Tangzu is better than, no, each one of them has their own little peculiarity. Dual driver, a planar and a PZT, single driver, newer generation planar, and then a dual driver setup, again, two planars, a 14 point something, a 14.2 if I'm not mistaken, and a 6mm. That in itself already brings to the table an inevitably different or a difference in terms of the presentation, okay? And then it comes down to what else is being offered here. What else do we get? The ET142 stands out by the fact that it has those adjustable and exchangeable nozzles, which allow you to then maybe, you know, make your own tuning and have that IEM tuned perfectly to your personal liking, while the Aether, the Kiwiears and Tangzu, you are stuck with what it is there. There's nothing you can change it. I mean, it is what it is. And then these two, they are very similar in their presentation, if I have to be totally honest, until about 6K, and then from 6K onwards you see that the Tangzu takes off in terms of overall resolution and detailed retrieval. I mean, really detailed. If that's your thing, then this is the IM to go for. If you want something which is more down to earth and more organic, more realistic to a certain extent, I would definitely say the Aether is the wiser option. And again, like I said, compared to the ones up top there isn't much, because again, all of them have their own little peculiarities. The MP145, the fact that it's got those exchangeable nozzles as well enables you to adjust it slightly. You're stuck with the tuning on the P20, you're stuck with the tuning on the S15. On the Timeless as well, you have the exchangeable nozzles, which again will allow for some adjustment of the sound, let's put it that way. And so honestly, there isn't a lot of things here. Okay, if I've got to go down the road of how is fit, okay, the MP145 is probably not one of the IMs that fits the nicest. The P20, although it's got a weird shell, it fits nicely. The same thing applies for the Timeless. The Tangzu, it's got a fantastic fit. The Kiwiears as well, the same thing. The Simgot, a really nice fit. The T10 Pro, although it's a smaller IM, it just has a fit because of that kind of bullet style that it's not the ideal. So in terms of fit, if I have to say, which is probably the winner, I would say the ET142 is the one that wins in terms of overall fit. In terms of overall accessories and what it's brought in the package and everything, I would probably say the best one is again the ET142. It's got the nicest cable, the nozzles, really good tips that work well. Guys, like I said, if you have the opportunity, go listen to things, spend your money wisely. Don't just throw it out the door. And remember one thing, there isn't a lot of differences. There isn't. And it really sometimes irritates me when I hear certain people say, oh, because this IM now is this and that. Nah. Trust me, I've said it countless times, and I'll say it as many times as it's needed. It's basically the same thing. Just, very slight nuances, very minor differences. All right, guys, this is part one. I'll do the videos for the graphs, and that's it. So any question you want to have, please let me know, and like and subscribe.